Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We are looking at our favorite video of each and every weekday, that player props video that we will look to kick off this week, as we did not have any games last night in the NBA as the college championship was going on, but a nice 12-game slate to select from tonight, so plenty of player props to choose from in here. Nate does have his great article up on playpicks.com, as well as some best bets and player props in there for you. And make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Check out all 3 game videos we have up for you today, as well as this 4th video, this player props we got up for you. And make sure to head to thelines.com as well. Make sure you're checking out our odds checker there and our player props tool. Make sure you're getting the best odds and juice available from odds makers and all your NBA player props out there tonight, as well as head to play.thelines.com if you like the chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card. Just head over to that NBA Daily Pick'em challenge there. Get all of those right, and we will send you a $25 Amazon gift card. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight's player props. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, the first game that should catch your eye is the Rockets at the Nets. Rockets playing at the fastest pace in the league by far, 105 possessions per game while going over in 4 straight. That includes a total of 271 in their last loss against Minnesota. And the Nets are actually playing at the 3rd fastest pace in that span. So this total been bet up from 242 to now 245. Kevin Porter Jr. is the most confident bet for me on the Rockets side. His prop is still at 26.5 points and assists when he's averaging 26 points in his last 4 games. It's kind of a head scratcher to me, along with 9.5 assists. So, I mean, he should smash that as he's getting slightly worse odds for the 31.5 points, rebounds, assists. I don't have a problem with that either. He's also averaging nearly 8 boards per game in that 4-game span. Without Christian Wood on the season, he goes up from 4 to 7 rebounds. He goes up to 7.5 assists. He goes up from 14 points to 22 points and is actually even more efficient, shooting 48% from the floor. He went for 20 points and 6 dimes against Brooklyn on nice 9 for 16 shooting last March. And as we know, Brooklyn is far, far worse on defense at this juncture, as they've been forced to kind of play a lot of 2 or 3 diminutive guard lineups with Irving, Mills, and Dragic sometimes on the floor at the same time. They're giving up the 3rd most points per game to point guards on the season. Don't really have a good defender in the backcourt. I mean, Kevin Durant's not going to switch onto Porter Jr. too much. It's not like they have enough respect for the Rockets to say, we need to lock you up. They're probably just going to come right back and score their points, which is, I think, where you're going with your prop.
Yeah, I mean, if there's going to be a 245 point total put up as the total line set for a game, then we're going to pick more than one prop in that game. I'm going to go back to Kyrie, who we obviously have kind of stayed away from a little bit as he's cooled down from what he had to have. Nobody could sustain shooting 60% from 3, dropping like 45 points a game, obviously. Plus, coming back and playing multiple games in a row now. We've stayed away from him a little bit, but it's definitely time to go back to Kyrie at 25.5 or 32.5 points and assists combined. Like I said, time to go back to him against a Rockets team that the last time he played them at the end of March of last year, he had 31 points and 12 assists in that time frame, 32% usage rate. So plenty to like against a Houston team that is allowing the 3rd most assists to point guards, allowing the 5th most points per game to point guards, playing at that 105 pace that you mentioned in the KPJ prop you talked about, and then Brooklyn actually playing in their last 4, also 3rd in pace at that time as well. So both these teams playing super fast. Shout out to Hater Muse, as Nate found a pretty good follow at this point on Twitter. Jalen Green posting the 2nd worst defensive rating since the merger, not just in terms of a season. We're talking about since the ABA and the NBA merged in the 70s. That's how long it's been since someone has been as bad individually at defense as Jalen Green has been. His opponents are shooting 8% better when they're guarded by him from the field. They're shooting 54% against him overall, highest in the league against any one player, not surprisingly. So a bunch of really bad individual stats that also help you go, all right, if anybody couldn't stop Kyrie, it's definitely Jalen Green, since nobody else seems to be able to. Probably not the worst defender since the 70s is going to help us keep him under 26 points tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that's key in terms of a get-right game for Kyrie, who, since being cleared for home games, shooting 36% from the floor and has really disappointed in the first 3 home games there. 24 points per game still, though. I mean, it's by his standards. He just has a poor efficiency output. He can definitely get right in this matchup. And you said you're worried a little bit about the blowout. Well, I wouldn't be if I'm betting on Kyrie, because the only time the Nets have covered double digits in the last month or so is when Kyrie had 60 points against Orlando. Give me a scenario in which they cruise to victory without Kyrie and KD scoring 30 points or combining for over 60. I don't think it's there. Honestly, if I was betting this game, I would take 18 points for Houston. I don't think Brooklyn is smashing anybody right now, and they have a very low cover rate at home. Looking to another game we break down, the Jazz and Grizzlies, with Donovan Mitchell set to lead the team as he has in his last 10 games, sporting that high 36.5% usage rate, averaging nearly 30 points per game, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 46% from the floor. He's hit at least 26 points in all but one of those games. That was when he tweaked his ankle in a bad loss to Dallas. So now he gets Memphis with Dylan Brooks out. And Brooks has been his primary defender in this matchup. Not that he was able to stop Donnie. He fouled out a few times in the playoffs as Mitchell went for 30 points per game, 7.5 assists, on a 38% usage rate to close out Memphis with 3 straight strong performances. In his last 3 in the regular season, Brooks has been in the lineup for most of those. 29 points per game, 7 assists, 54% from 3 for a 126 offensive rating. Dropped 35 points in back-to-back meetings with Memphis last March. Memphis, one of their few weak spots is shooting guards that can knife into the lane. They're giving up the 6th most points to that position in their last 30 games. And if you're thinking about blowouts, I don't think Memphis is going to get blown out. And that's what we talk about in the game video. If you can get 5 points or tease them up to 9 points, really the hottest team in the league right now, you got to feel great about that. Utah. And the reason that Mitchell's points and minutes are down a little bit at home is because Utah blows teams out when they can't score with the Jazz. But see Memphis coming along for the ride tonight. And when Donnie gets 36 minutes, his per 36 is 28 points. Yep. So that is all to say 26.5 points is his prop. It's only minus 106 at FanDuel. Yeah. And it is a great value bet.
It's a great value bet. I mean, not only are you getting Donnie under 28, 29 points as his prop, you're also getting that great close to even money there. Yeah, I really like that. And yeah, you talk about Donnie getting 36 minutes tonight. I do think we said in the game video, we like Memphis to cover 6 points, even potentially get teased up, which means this is going to be a close enough game. Donnie's going to get, I think, those 36 minutes. And yeah, when he does, I think you can pencil in over 27 points or so in that time frame, as he also continues to just not pass the ball to Rudy Gobert and get those shots up, which is also why I like the points in this one as well. Lastly, I don't think we've talked about this young man all season, and it's time to get Poku on the books as a player props pick. Alexis Pokusevski for the Thunder. The young man has been playing really well during the Thunder Tankathon. It seems like they play the Blazers every night at this point. The NBA basically just said, okay, you guys are clearly not trying to win, Thunder and Blazers. Go ahead and just play on an island over there, and we will not televise your games. His last 4, though, for Poku, 14.5 points, 7 boards, 9 assists. He's sitting at 21.5 points and assists tonight, or even 14.5 points and rebounds and assists. That's at minus 104 on FanDuel for those ancillary stats there that we like to call them. We could also talk about the turnovers for him, 4.3 turnovers per game in his last 4. I actually saw him throw a ball over a guy's head into the upper deck on a pass that he was wide open. So he is a little bit erratic, which if you like over 4.5 turnovers tonight for the young man, you could get some really sweet, juicy odds on that. And then, yeah, I think, though, the points and assists, being serious, he definitely is putting up those stats, and he's getting the minutes as well. In the last 4, we're also talking about a couple of really impressive lines, once again, against Portland, where he got 41 minutes minutes with an 11-8-11 line there. And then versus the Suns as well, where last Sunday where he got 36 minutes. We're talking about 17, 10, and 12, a nice little triple-double against the best team in the NBA. He's had double-digit points in 8 of his last 9 home games where they played tonight, averaging 13 points and 7 boards, 5 assists in that time frame, and about 28.5 minutes per game at home. So I think his minutes will continue to be up closer to the 35 to 40 minute range against a really bad team in the Blazers that they just want to continue to get Poku some run. So I think it's a good opportunity to pounce on Poku in terms of his points and assists or his rebounds and assists, both of which I feel good about, just mostly because he keeps just getting a ton of assists.
Yeah, as long as you keep turning the ball over, you will get rewarded with more minutes in OKC right now. Maybe they're playing chess and the rest of us are playing checkers, and everyone will be making that pass that Poku makes with that somehow sails into the second row. But no, he's 7 feet tall. He's athletic. He can make plays. The turnovers are going to be there. He's going to be a really inefficient, erratic shooter, which is kind of why I like the rebounds assists more, just because of the sheer bulk of time on the floor in a game that, should have plenty of stats for both teams as they just completely let their young guys run around out there. I mean, if there's 100 possessions, if he's out there for the whole time, we're talking about 35 PRA for him with a poor offensive rating. So as long as Portland keeps up the pace, and OKC has been playing much more run and gun since they started to fully embrace these young guys, I think we should get enough stats for him to just fill up those ancillary stats, as you put it.
Yep.
Memphis is +5 at Utah here. We talked about them on Friday. They always seem to cover when they're overlooked, and they straight up beat the Suns with 5 of their best players out. That was on Friday, so they got a little extra rest here as they face the Jazz, who are playing their second game back after that awful road trip for them. 11 other games to look at, though, and we do break down a couple for you, including the Sixers -12 at Pacers. Totals up from 231 to 234. I still would take the over there as long as it doesn't go much higher. Cavs are -8 at Magic. Hawks +4 at Raptors. Rockets are +17 at the Nets. That total keeps rising, Josh, is at 245. The Hornets +5.5 at Miami. Blazers are +4.5 at Thunder. And the Bucks -5 at Bulls. We break that game down for you. Another total that's rising, up 6 points to 234. The Wizards +12 at the Wolves. Spurs without DeJounte are now up to +10 at Denver. And the Pelicans -8 at Kings. And then finally the Lakers +12 at Suns, as they look all but done for in their quest for the play-in game. I mean, Memphis can't really move too much. I mean, I don't think it's even possible for them to move in the standings at this point. 8 games behind the Suns, I believe 4 ahead of Dallas for that second spot. At the same time, I don't think this is a team that has much throttle down, and they have 2 more games here against the West at Utah than at Denver. And then they might cool off a little bit, rest any guys with ailments against the 2 Eastern Conference teams they face at the end here. But even when they decided to rest guys on Friday, we saw that they are the deepest and just the hottest team in the league right now. I mean, other guys stepping in, D'Anthony Melton, of course, Kyle Anderson running point forward. They can keep rolling with guys out. Tonight they're going to be missing Ja, who as we should know by now, an incredible 20-2 record without him, ridiculous net rating. That's just silly, but I mean, they've won 7 straight since he went down last time. Dylan Brooks now out as well. He did play on Friday, but they will get back Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Steven Adams to face the Jazz now. I mean, Utah has lost 6 of their last 7, but that's a bit misleading since they suck on the road. And they've won 12 of their last 13 at home. Under is hit in 12 of the last 17 there, but I'm not expecting an under here because I think the reason the Jazz have won a lot of those games, the reason they've covered in a decent amount, slightly over 50%, is because they've been playing teams that either are terrible on offense, lately going under with the Clippers before Paul George came back, and holding them to 103 points per game with a 107 defensive rating. it seems like every team that goes into Utah is in the midst of some long road trip where they have to go to Denver too. They're exhausted from that. They're flying all over the place. Then they have to go to the West Coast the next night. And they capitalize. I mean, they do have the best offense rating in the league at home. Their rating is 124 in that 13-game span. So if anything, I'm leaning over here, even though the Grizz have been much, much better on offense at home. They've still hit 120 in 8 of their last 10 games now. They scored 119 against Utah last time out, beat the Jazz in Utah, again scoring 119 in November. John Morant, a big role in that, but as we mentioned, they tend to come out and play. And the biggest thing, it's just when you're getting 5 points in a game that's a toss-up in our minds, Memphis is a good value here. If you want to bet the money line, sure. I think you take the 5 points here if you want to bet it straight up. I think you could also just tease it to 9 points and with the game of your choice in another area. I don't really want to mess with the total. If you want to tease this total down to 220, take the over. I think that'll probably hit, given the way both these teams will win. But I think the stronger bet here is just Memphis to keep doing what they do, which is cover as underdogs, 18-9 against the spread. With a rest advantage, 16-8 against the spread, and even better, 19-5 straight up, winning by 10.5 points per game. Again, they've been off since Friday. Jazz had a long road trip. And the last thing I'll mention about the Jazz is their chemistry is just unraveling right now. Rudy Gobert and Donnie Mitchell are sort of taking subtle shots at each other through the media. They don't really like each other at this point. They just blew a 16-point lead to lose to the Warriors, went scoreless for 8 minutes. It's really on Donovan Mitchell to carry this offense, even with Bogdanovich back. They've been a bit sputtery, playing at the slowest pace in the league. I don't trust them in any situation right now, and certainly not against a team that finds a way no matter who's out there for them.
Yeah, 100%. The only thing about taking an over here, to be honest, because we talked a bit about the over, and then you really kind of culminated with, I still like Memphis to cover 5 points, probably a little bit more than I feel strongly about the over or the total either way, over or Hunter, to be honest, at about 224.5. I would feel slightly, I don't know. I'm honestly 50-50. The thing about the under is I would love to be able to take it because of the fact that the Jazz, they really do play a nice style of defense that is tailored for stopping what Memphis does really well. Memphis scores fast break points. They score second chance points. They score points in the paint, right? And I'm really saying the same thing. They're scoring their fast break points in the paint. They're scoring their points in the paint off of whomever at this point is driving into the lane. And then also obviously, their second chance points, because they're a very good rebounding team as well at pretty much every single position where they have height at pretty much every single position. So I would say that the under would be a little bit more tailored to what I think is going to happen because of the fact that Memphis wants to play at pace. They want to score in the paint. Utah does both of those things super well. They limit their turnovers. They limit their opponent's points off of turnovers. So they limit everything that Memphis wants to do, which is run and gun and get the ball into the paint rather than really hoisting too many threes, which is not where they score their points. Utah has been scoring their points obviously off of threes, but they've been shooting horribly from three, despite the fact that, they shoot the third highest percentage of their field goal attempts from the 3-point line over the course of the last 7 games, where you mentioned they've lost 6 of 7. That they still are shooting the 4th worst 3-point percentage, despite shooting all of those threes and needing them to go in to win their game. So the fact that they're not as hot from three, obviously also a huge factor here. Since the All-Star break, at home, they still are, while they do have the best offensive rating, you mentioned over 124 in the league since the All-Star break on offense. They also have the third best defense, with an 108 defensive rating in that time frame at home as well. So I think, once again, Memphis, what they do on offense, stoppable by Utah. I think what Utah does on offense is also somewhat stoppable by Memphis, as they're also limiting teams in the paint, which is where Utah likes to score. And they do have, a pretty good opponent 3-point percentage at this point, better at home than it is on the road, which is to be expected as they're lights out at home. But this is a spot where, both of us looked at it and immediately went, Utah should not be giving points to Memphis when Utah is sort of sputtering, at least, especially in the media. The question is, once we look at it upon further closer examination, you start to realize the reason the Jazz have lost the games they've lost as of late is because they're a horrible, horrible road team this year, and they have been all year. This is not an anomaly at this point. They're a bad road team and still a good home team. So I think the games that they've lost and the games that they failed to cover in, they're all the road games, right? I mean, they definitely failed to cover against the Bucks as they lost that game. It was a big game for the Bucks, actually, as they got all their guys back finally. And beating the Bulls is a good win, but there's not that many good wins in this, even in this home when they have been at home as of late. But they're covering to the points that you made, and they're winning those games. So I do think it's more likely that Utah wins this one. But that's mostly also because Memphis has just been doing things without their stars that are still head scratching. I mean, 20-2 with 100 defensive rating without Ja in 22 games. It's just wild. And then they did it without their key backups other than D'Anthony Melton in the last game. It's something that is somewhat more inexplainable to me than explainable. And I would be loath to bet against Memphis covering until I see, their backups play poorly as well, because they haven't in the whole season.
I'll explain it to you. They like each other. Utah does not. And it's just stale in Utah at this point. They know the team is probably going to get broken up unless they somehow pull it together in the playoffs here. They're clinging to that fifth spot right now, tied with Denver. Half game back in the tiebreaker. Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, it is just not that the vibes are not good out there in Salt Lake, and Memphis. They've covered in now 10 of their last 12 when they're underdogs. It's a very reliable source in terms of that. I will say that the over is hit actually in 11 of the last 12 between these teams. That includes playoffs, where Utah kind of cracked that Memphis defense. Yeah. You mentioned they did a pretty good job of holding Donnie in check in the regular season. And after beating them in game one, Donnie came back and just scorched them. And I will be looking at his props tonight. He's again only at 26.5 points with nearly even money there. That's been a reliable source of bankroll, to be honest. Just betting in Donnie Mitchell's points every night over the last couple of weeks. It's hit and missed in only one game against Dallas when he got hurt there. I expect him to try to carry this team, but Memphis is a full team now with their full roster, with both Adams and Jaren Jackson out there. They can play great defense in clutch time. They can match the Jazz in terms of rebounding. And with Tyus Jones out there, they can stay on schedule. D'Anthony Melton can play more off the ball, and they can maintain that pace in terms of scoring. I mean, one of the hottest teams in the league, 5 points, 9 points if you want to tease it. It just feels very comfortable in terms of they're not going to lose that badly. Again, because this is one of their last two conference games, priming for the playoffs. So that's what we're targeting right now. Yeah. And then, I could see something wacky happening against the Eastern Conference at the end of the season, but they're going to come out and play this team, especially the team that knocked them out last year.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. And I think you could probably still get some value on these Memphis player props as well. I would consider Desmond Bane 20.5 points. I mean, without Ja this season, he's averaging about 25.5 points a game. So that 20.5 feels a bit low, other than the fact that D'Anthony Melton has also turned into, the top 15 shooting guard of the league all of a sudden, to add to Desmond Bane, who's probably in the top 10 as far as shooting guards go this year. So there's plenty of points available there for Desmond Bane. I also like Triple J at 16.5. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to get some guys props for the Grizzlies. Loving Donnie for the Jazz, obviously, as well, as he continues to not pass to Rudy Gobert when he gets into the lane, which does lead to a lot more points for him. So it's probably a big reason for why he's hitting is he's just not even passing the ball to Rudy Gobert anymore. I know you had a stat in here that I also heard somewhere about how he's assisting on like something near 13% of Rudy Gobert's buckets, which is just way too low for someone.
He averages more turnovers per game than passes to Gobert.
Passes, not even assists, passes to Rudy Gobert. It's an absurd stat. So yeah, it's all bad in Utah right now. I do think Memphis is a lot better bet to cover here. The total could go either way. Would consider a tease if you like it, but I'm much more confident about that Memphis game tonight. So
they're 12-point favorites in Indy, but considering what we said last time we saw them, that the Pistons had covered routinely and they straight up lost to the Pistons, definitely not the team you want to trust right now, unless it comes to taking advantage of a terrible defense and becoming a front-running team, because that is what James Harden-led teams do. But we'll explain more about that in a minute. We're going to look at these other 10 games. The Cavs minus 8.5 at Orlando. Hawks are +4 at Raptors. Interesting matchup between hot teams heading into the playoffs. Rockets are +17 at Brooklyn with a 243 total there, as those teams have been playing all sorts of silly ball. Hornets +5.5 at Miami. The Blazers are +4 at the Thunder. Bucks -4.5 at Chicago. We break that one down for you in one of our other videos. Wizards +11 at the Wolves. The Spurs without DeJounte +7 at Denver. Grizz +5 at Utah. We will also bring you a video on that. And then the Pelicans -8 at the Kings. The Sixers, since that loss against the Pistons, have kind of corrected the ship in terms of unleashing Harden a little more, or, getting him back into a rhythm, maybe adjusting the way they play to get him some confidence back. Because, it's some out of context comments from Doc Rivers, again, almost lumping Harden into the same bus as Ben Simmons, where they asked him, was it the reserves not fitting along with James, or did they do something with James? And he's like, well, James just missed shots. James just needs to play better. He has, and the Sixers have won consecutive games here with excellent offensive numbers, a 128 rating, 30.5 assists, 31.5 free throws, getting back to the line, and hitting 16 triples at a 43% rate. So, that should spell great things against the Pacers team that's just giving up points in droves. In their last 4 in particular, a 128 defensive rating, allowing 120, coming right back with Tyrese Halliburton leading the charge with a 123 offensive rating. And their three-point defense has just been woeful in their last 5. They're giving up 45.5%. Along with a league-high 32 assists and a league-high 128 points in that span. So, we're trying to forecast the team totals here because they're not up yet as we record on Monday night. And trying to do the math here, how is Philly going to be projected to score about 120, 121? They're favored by 12. And Indy's got to be projected to score 116. So why is this total 231 is basically what I'm wondering. It should be about 238 or so. Indy has not really gone below that total. They have gotten blown out by some teams like the Grizzlies that can absolutely lock it down. Toronto as well. But those other teams, they scored 130 to blow out the Pacers. And now the Pacers are playing with much better offensive efficiency, as Tyrese Halliburton is coming off a freaking career night against the Celtics. Then he drops 17 dimes in a loss against the Pistons. He happened to go for 38 points and 11 assists in Philly on January 29th, one of his last games with the Kings. Malcolm Brogdon could play tonight. He's just been out resting, but this is the kind of spot where you would expect a veteran to come out, try to play a little spoiler. He also has good numbers against the Sixers. And look, the Pacers, they play with pace. They play pretty bad, pretty good on offense and pretty awful on defense. So they've gone over in 26 of their last 37. So they're a team you can rely on. And the Sixers, when they play a bad team, they had gone over in 5 straight against losing teams prior to that Pistons game where they just forgot to get off the bus. So I think you look at that and they're over in 4 of their last 5 against the Pacers. I think we definitely feel good about over here. And again, I would take it up to 234 or higher, because I think both these teams are going to score around 120, to be honest. And I think the Pacers are going to cover. If you ask me which thing is going to happen, I don't see the Sixers being a confident team to cover 12 points right now.
Yeah, I don't want to bet on them right now either. It's funny. It's like Philly and Brooklyn are kind of sort of the amount that they scare the Eastern Conference teams right now at the top is waning hugely. And really, for me, the reason it's interesting, it's the inverse of each other. Brooklyn's struggling to find anybody to help Kyrie and KD score. And the all-star, the superstar allegedly on Philly is really dictating whether or not they have a good game on offense or not. And he's just so inconsistent right now that it's kind of tough. I mean, his game log since he's come here, I'm not in Philadelphia, since he went to Philadelphia, it's just all over the place. And it's in part because he is trying to fill up those other stats, right? I mean, if you're betting on him combining his rebounds and assists each game, I mean, he's averaging close to, if not 20 combined rebounds and assists in roughly 65% of the games that he's been playing this with Philly this season. So it's just there's at the same time they need him to score. There aren't, now that they don't have the shooters that they had, and even if you want to consider Andre Drummond someone who would get you 8 to 12 points of just cleaning up garbage on the offensive side of the board glass when Embiid was down, that was another at least sort of like I said, 8 to 12 points a game they could rely on. Without the shooting of Seth Curry outside right now, Korkmaz, they can't even really get him back into the lineup. He's shooting so poorly. It's honestly same with Danny Green, who if you're really waiting on Danny Green to be the guy to save you right now, it's he's also sort of at the tail end of his career in a way that he's just not going to bring you the same level of consistency and efficiency. My point is there's not enough shooting around James and Embiid right now for James Harden to just say, I don't need to worry about getting into the lane and getting my points. I'm going to go ahead and just try and dime it up. It's not going to, in my opinion, not going to be how this works out for them. And really, if you look at the games where he's failing to score in the major points, that's where he's really struggling in terms of his plus minus, which isn't obviously everyone's favorite statistic, but his impact on the court is sort of being really, it's correlated to the amount of points that he scores when he's relying, like I said, not only just relying on rebounds and assists, but you look at the field goal attempts that he's taking in these games where he doesn't have really the plus minus that you expect of him. I mean, in the last two games that he scored at least 29 points, let's say, against Milwaukee, as well as against the Clippers, his plus minus there is plus 31 over 2 games. Then you look at the games where he's scoring, roughly 13 points, 17 points, what have you. It's down back around -1, even +2, +3. So there's a clear correlation between the amount of points that he is putting up, the amount of field goal attempts that he's taking, and their ability to score offense. So I think you made a great point that they've ramped up their pace in the last couple because they are trying to get Harden going. They are trying to put the ball in his hands and allow him to do what he wants on offense and really go down and get the shot that he wants in the first 10, 12 seconds of the shot clock, rather than wait for him to just dribble. They're getting into their offense quicker. They're getting that screen and roll so he can get the matchup he wants to still, unfortunately, take step back threes a little too often. But at least he is getting into the lane a little bit more and actually getting those shot attempts up. And I think that's the trend that continues tonight. And I'm predicting that the more that they put the ball in his hands for shot attempts and increase that usage rate, that's where their offense continues to go. And I just think their defense is not really anything that has you feeling good about it enough anyway against a team like the Pacers, who's going to continue to play at a pace of 102, 103 tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the Pacers are an exciting team with Halliburton at the helm, and they can score, as we just saw in Boston. They kept up right into the end of the fourth quarter, so I'm not too worried, about that Sixers defense. While they have kept the points down because of the slow pace, when they ramp it up, they will go over. And Harden has had success against Indy. Of course, his last trip to Indy was very impressive at the end of last season, a 40-point triple-double. And then he kind of loafed to 18 points because he was already starting to quit on the Nets in January. So he can find success against this team. And, you talk about the Sixers' lack of shooting, and it is a real issue since this trade. But the quality of shots that the Pacers are giving up right now, it's cake. It's like facing a bad zone in a rec league. I mean, anybody can hit these shots, and the Sixers and plus the Pacers go up the second most paint points, and they're giving up the sixth most points to centers. I mean, Embiid obviously going to get his whenever he wants against this team with no Miles Turner in there. Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson, the young guys, are going to have their hands full for sure. And this is the situation where the Sixers cover the most when the road favorites, 15-7 to the over this season. They do win against teams below 500, so I have no problem taking the money line and the over here. But I am not touching a 12-point spread right now with this team as inconsistent as they've been.
Hell no. Same concept as when we saw the Pistons cover against the Nets the other night with a 12, 13-point spread. It was just like, look, man, no one's saying the Pacers are going to win this game, but we're also saying I think it's more likely they lose by less than 13 than more by 13. That's my personal opinion, and that comes from a lack of seemingly effort on the defensive end for Philly. Certainly a lack of effort around the rim in terms of rebounding, as they've been in the bottom 3 rebounding all season. Every time we look at that stat, I think it's sort of just over a sample size of games. But no, it's the whole season. They're one of the worst rebounding teams in the league, and definitely didn't get better once they gave up Andre Drummond. I think I don't love the lack of shooting around them, but to your point, Harden's going to get to his spots on the floor. Anybody really is going to get to their spots on the floor. So if anybody can hit shots outside of Embiid and Harden tonight, this will be the night that they're going to likely be able to go off a little bit more. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. It might not be the sexiest game tonight, but there's some money to be made at the way that this total is a little bit too low right now, 230 and a half, 231. If you could even get it up another 3 points, I think we still feel good about taking the over there. So make sure you like to subscribe to that page and check out all 3 game videos we have up for you today, including as well as on top of that, our player props video we love to bring you each and every weekday. And until we see you next, happy betting.